For Qatar, there is no black or white, good or evil, only grubby grey, maroon morality. Represent Hamas, and they'll put you up in a hotel just down the road from a US airbase. They have been pragmatically fluid, all right. Safe haven for any Islamist terrorist that wanted to wear a suit and negotiate while directing their death cult from afar. Until now, and Israel making the missile backed point in Doha that for Hamas leadership, there is no place to hide. Whether they are dead now or not, can they be sure there won't be a next time? Meanwhile, in the West, Starmer and Macron have been schooling the world in why we need more Qatari-style diplomacy, which basically means condemning Israel repeatedly and loudly.
Welcome to today reality show. Daniel apparently is on strike, so we'll have to carry this one. Uh, yeah, as we heard, Qatar has been hit on the head because they're harboring Hamas terrorists, which is in itself a fact that lots of people in the West seem to have forgotten. They just talk about Israel hitting Qatar, but conveniently forgetting the fact that actually they were targeting the head of Hamas, which is conveniently hiding in Qatar very cozily in their multi-million pound compounds. And of course, let's not forget that the previous leader died as billionaires. So they're living a cozy life while their people in Gaza are paying the consequences of their own decisions. Decision that the people in Gaza supported and allowed to happen and implemented on October 7. We've seen footage from people in Gaza themselves hitting and hiding the hostages, which are still held in Gaza. But looks like, unfortunately, the hit wasn't a hit. Looks like some of the leaders, probably all the leaders, got away with it, and only a few minor people, including the son of Elia, died. Which is a shame in a way, because it would be nice to decapitate Hamas once and for all. Not that it matters really who the leader of Hamas is, because any member of Hamas is a terrorist. But it would have been nice to get rid of them. They deserve to be eliminated, really. However, even if the strike didn't achieve the objective that Israel intended, they're still Hamas is still a bit shaken. I mean, the Israeli mentioned that they wanted to hit the enemies wherever they are hiding, and the strike in Qatar showed that they're willing to do it. They don't just promise it; they actually do what they told them that they would do. But will it mean that next strike, probably not in Qatar, perhaps in Turkey or in Iran again, will succeed? Does it matter, Daniel, if the strike didn't actually decapitate Hamas as such? Do we care?
I mean, to some extent, yes. I mean, depends on what the intelligence Israel had, and yeah, I mean, simply taking out these people, as I've said, especially since some of the reports have said that they were taken out. Now, this was only sort of like Saudi news that have reported that people like Khalid Mashal and Al Haya were taken out. It looks like I see another report that two were injured and one is in critical condition, but I don't know which ones specifically there are. But as you've said, this is great thing to see. It shows Qatar that you cannot hide terrorists and act as if it's just something you can do without any consequence. Previously, the leadership of Hamas was taken out by Israel, and they had to wait until they go somewhere like Iran, which I think this is a good step because in the past, when Israel was acting in Gaza and in Yemen, the fact is, most of the world looked at it like, okay, these are non-state actors, meaning the Houthis and Hamas. They're considered non-state actors. So while the world kind of is still going against it, they couldn't really say much, right? Then Israel attacked Iran, and Iran is a UN member. Iran is sort of like fully sovereign state, supposedly, but still, Iran is a pariah state to large extent by the world. It has sanctions on it. More sanctions are coming unless something changed in the last few days. So that was sort of accepted as well. Now with Qatar, Qatar is a major US ally. Qatar is a major Western ally, or at least is considered. Qatar is funding a lot of American universities, European programs. A lot of partnerships are happening between the European states and Qatar, and Israel struck within it. And I think it's a good sign of just because you are sort of accepted uh, as a sort of like an ally of the West, or so I don't know what to really call it, but sort of like a modernized state or whatever, that doesn't excuse you from uh, holding or allowing terrorists to stay within your territory. Now, the next obvious, oh, well, not sure if obvious, but the next step obviously should be a country like Turkey that is also has terrorists within its borders. But of course, Turkey is a NATO country, and especially with yesterday's news about Russia sending drones into Poland, I'm not sure if Israel would be, and I'm not sure if necessarily Israel should. I think it's more of the West to kick out the Turkey out of NATO rather than Israel to attack a, unfortunately, still NATO nation. But as we've said, Turkey is another state that is actively harboring Hamas terrorists, that has trained or has allowed Hamas militants to be trained within its borders.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, you mentioned within what you said then that Qatar is an ally of the US. You can also argue it's an ally of Iran as well at the same time, can't you? To be honest, I mean, they managed together the natural gas field, don't they? The largest in the world, and that kind of stuff, and how they fund Hamas on in many ways behind the scenes, and much of the media propaganda that supports Hamas is also ultimately serving Iran's interests, isn't it? I think it's been good today that you've also seen the Israelis going for some of the Houthi targets in Yemen at the same time, taking out some of the military compounds and a media HQ in Yemen. As well, but Houthi media HQ in Yemen, and a fuel storage place as well. I think so. It's clearly part of a wider strategy than just this. But of course, we don't actually know whether they were warned or not, or who by, or to what extent. Whether Steve Witkoff gave them the heads up moments before in order for them to leave via the back door or not. I mean, do you give any credence to that side of it? I mean, surely the US were probably informed at some level at some stage, but that might have been afterwards or as it was hitting. What are your thoughts, Daniel?
Um, so from what we know, based on Trump, or more specifically, Caroline Levitt, the spokeswoman, I guess, for the White House, she said that they did contact Qatar, that this was coming. Now, Qatar says that they basically were contacted about this happening after or while the strike was happening. I think it was the Prime Minister of Qatar who also said that Iran was a nice state. They did let us know which targets they are targeting, because reminder, Qatar was attacked by Iran also. But they told us they are attacking us, and Israel didn't. Now, a question was, how did this attack even happen, since Qatar has air defense systems? Official story, or at least what Qatar is saying, that Israel most likely struck outside of Qatari airspace and were able to basically use the type of missiles that are able to get through air defense systems. Which, if there are missiles that are able to get through your air defense systems, I feel like you should replace those air defense systems. Might need new ones, but so we have that. Now, if they were told, we'll have to see and wait from the IDF. Although generally Israeli intelligence is really good and is very precise. Again, Haniyeh was taken out. The Houthi, I mean, there was a Houthi strike today, but also there was a Houthi strike or strike at the Houthis. What was it, a few days ago or last week, where they did manage to take out pretty much I think the prime minister of the Houthis and a bunch of top level officials. So generally, Israeli intelligence is really precise and is really good. So, or go to the Iranian operation. Also, they were able to take out many of them. So I think that puts me more towards that maybe they were warned, which again would be very problematic. What we know, or again, what Trump is saying, that he didn't necessarily like okay the attack, like he wasn't really asked about like should we do it. Israel has decided to do it, and they did inform US at some point.
Yeah. I mean, personally, I find it very hard to believe that they weren't warned. If anything else, because as we mentioned,
That they were?
that they weren't. I find it hard to believe that they didn't know about the strike, the Qataris. If anything else, because there's what I think the largest base in the Middle East is just a few yards away from the point where there was hit. So, if anything else, the United States would have had interest in making sure this wouldn't happen. And anyway, Trump told Netanyahu weeks ago to do whatever it takes, to do whatever he wants in order to get rid of Hamas leadership. And surely Netanyahu would have mentioned the fact that they are hiding in Qatar. And also, if you read the reports from Al Jazeera, they are very much matter of fact. They're not particularly, they don't seem particularly outraged at the event. So, as you mentioned, they used to be hit, and they used to okay certain strategic, if you like, diplomatic strikes that allow the diplomatic pressure to be released via a wannabe attack. So, yeah, I mean, it's very hard to believe that. But then again, who cares? The important thing is that the sun is taken out, and the fact that Israel has sent the message loud and clear: wherever you are, Hamas, wherever you're hiding, we're gonna get you. And frankly, they should ring alarm bells not only in the Middle East, but also, frankly, here in the West. I mean, there are lots and lots of Hamas operative and even former heads or whatever that actually live and make money here in the West. The Qatari interest itself, as you mentioned, I mean, the Qatari is not just well received in civilized society, but they're very much a mesh in our economies. I mean, they own a good chunk of Volkswagen, for example, or Porsche. Here in Britain, they own massive amounts of land, major infrastructure, and they are investing in all sorts of companies all across the world, especially in Europe. I mean, France on October 7 was actually dealing on behalf of the EU a massive gas supply deal from Qatar. As you mentioned, it's one of the largest gas producers in the world. So the way Qatar is, if you like, enmeshed in the fabric of and relationship, economic and diplomatic in the West, suggests that they would have known. I mean, it's hard to believe, and also makes you wonder, why is it intelligence of Israel is so sketchy? Why is it that they managed to get the leadership of the Houthi, that they get to even manage to get the Ayatollah because the site where it was actually was bombed by. They knew exactly the location of Khamenei. They knew when Nasrallah was. They knew when the point of hitting was. So I find it hard to believe that they didn't know. I mean, hopefully, to be honest, not knowing the MO of Israel, hopefully this is a bit of a distraction. Hopefully they're gonna go and hit where Hamas really can hurt. But I don't know. I mean, we're just in a pure speculation now because unfortunately we haven't got insight or first-hand knowledge of what happens in the cabinet in Israel. But it's nice to see those things happen. It's nice to see that, if anything else, a message loud and clear has been sent to whatever enemy or so-called allies it claim to be.
Yeah. And certainly you've punctured the myth that you're untouchable just because you're holed up in Qatar. And that was something that people were clearly relying on. And for people like Khalil al-Hayya, who was a planner of October the 7th, the chief negotiator for Hamas, somebody who'd held a series of jobs within Hamas, including replacing various people that Israel had taken out in the past, including Mohammed Deif for a short while in his role. So I think this is a key figure. And we don't yet know which of those that you mentioned may be in critical condition. With any luck, it is him, frankly. But we will find out in time. Thank you very much, Gail Parker, for your super chat. Appreciate it. Let me ask you, Daniel, the devil's advocate question. Doesn't Qatar have a right to defend itself?
I mean, again, this is like a question we hear, here and there. I'll get to it, but first, something that I've seen around, and Bonnie in the chat has also asked this is there a possibility that Qatar allowed this attack because they want Hamas eliminated? And I've seen this here and there, and I just cannot really. Even assuming that Qatar was told about this attack, I just cannot really wrap my head around why would Qatar want to get rid of Hamas if they truly are just throwing them under the bridge. But again, to what end, basically? I mean, Qatar and generally a lot of Al Thani family, a lot of Qatari news have been very supportive of the Muslim Brotherhood, which is sort of which Hamas came from the Muslim Brotherhood. So you have that again. Maybe there is some. Maybe they are truly just trying to sort of be more accepting by the West, but not in the way of basically becoming Western, but simply the sort of Saudi Arabian style, right? Just being accepted as we act with you, we act like you are a civilized country, we act like you also, basically can be part of the big boys club. This idea about Qatar has the right to defend itself. Again, it's that sort of thing where I mean, we have people in the chat saying like as Israel can somebody is a terrorist and then eliminate them. Does that mean that Hamas was just in October 7 because they did the same thing? The fact is that different people doing the same thing can be different. A right to defend itself. That's why I don't even like to talk about the right to defend itself, because countries do not have rights. It's countries have obligations towards their citizens to defend their right to life, which might include. Okay, Mark and Richard say they might crash soon, so I'll just keep talking. But you're here for now. Which includes sort of defending your citizens from foreign threats. This is a part of it, right? So, does Qatar have a right to defend itself? Well, Qatar, if it is a proper state, has a right to, has a responsibility towards its citizens. But Qatar doesn't recognize the rights of its citizens. There are no free elections. There are no. I mean, there are property rights to some extent, but but even then, when you don't have a proper justice system, when you don't have a proper or at least somewhat functioning democracy, when you don't have a properly functioning court systems, nothing really matters.
Yeah, well,
Yeah. And in that extent, you cannot claim the right to defend itself. Like you don't care about the rights of your citizens. So why should you now have the right to protect them from foreign threats?
yeah, you're right. You're right. That's actually a point I was going to make. When people talk about the prime minister of Qatar or the prime minister of the Houthis, well, these people, I mean, Qatar itself is an autocracy. The guy in charge has got supreme power, effectively. It's a old-style Louis XIV kind of monarchy. The same for Saudi Arabia, whatever. So although they are embedded in our society, it doesn't mean that these people are civilized, and they are certainly not democratic, or certainly do not understand the value of individual freedom and the importance of protecting individual rights. And certainly they do not like freedom as such. The Qatar has a constitution, well, Crimea River. I mean, so what? They have a constitution, but the guy can do what he wants when he wants. The Houthis have got a prime minister, and what's the use? They're just a bunch of tribal terrorists anyway. So again, it's a reminder of how the states shroud themselves with a resemblance of civilization, a resemblance of democracy, just so that we fall effectively in the trap of thinking there are legitimate states. There are states that you can deal with. There are people who are like us, who wants peace and freedom, wherever. They don't. They are the only free state in the Middle East is Israel. It's a very state that everybody seems to want. To a ridiculous extent, everybody seems to be obsessed with, and they want to see the end of, which is totally goes against any common sense. But there we are. That's how we hold contradictions in the West nowadays.
I want to thank Jonathan Honig for his super chat. He says, "Happy birthday to me." And it's a great way of celebrating Jonathan Honig's birthday by Jonathan and by anybody else who would like to celebrate Jonathan Honig's birthday in a similar manner with a super chat. So happy birthday to you, Jonathan. And if any of you missed the interview Jonathan did with Mark Shoup on Sunday on the Sunday Spark, do check that out as well, because that was fantastic as well. And that's all part of the run up to the Irreplaceable Spark conference taking place at the end of October. Daniel, how can people find out more about that?
Well, they can visit objectivism.co.uk. And as we said, Jonathan will be one of the speakers there. We've also recently announced Leonard Peikoff, who will be doing a talk about I think ragtime music, rag music. So that will be a new one, exclusive at the conference. So you can also check that out, objectivism.co.uk. And we've recently also announced Alex Epstein, the writer of now I cannot remember, Fossil Future.
Yes.
Yeah, Fossil Future. So make sure to join that. And we have one more super chat from Bonnie. Thank you so much. So again, objectivism.co.uk, the Irreplaceable Spark Conference later this year, October 25th, 26th, Orange County, California.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you, Daniel. And just sort of to pick up on some of what you were talking about earlier, particularly when Marco was mentioning the number of ties that Qatar has in different countries in the West, and the way in which it uses that economic leverage to ensure that, that there is always the inability for countries desperately or in need of money from anyone because of their own excessive welfare states to keep coming back to Qatar and keep looking the other way when Qatar and similar countries, essentially advocate for their enemy. So that's clearly some of what's going on here. I mean, I've heard them described in a number of different ways as active neutrals, strategic mediators, but I mean their dynamic pragmatism is really a case of whispering to anybody whatever they want to hear, even if it's in complete conflict with their own enemies, and saying the opposite to the next person 10 minutes later. all at the same time, relying on the fact that because they are a wealthy country, that people won't choose to attack them because they want some of that pie, essentially. I think the one of the aspects that's interesting about Qatar is they're part of the Cooperation Council, aren't they? So together with Saudi, UAE, Kuwait, Bahrain, and Oman, that group have sat together since 1981, since after the shortly after the Iranian Revolution, in contrast to that revolution, but of course at the same time also working with the Iranians subsequently in the case of Qatar in many areas. So all of it is a case of whispering to all parties at all times, and I think. You have to be very wary of someone who is unable to make the distinction between good and evil, as I said at the start, and is unable to define, what the moral clarity is, because essentially that ends up ultimately polluting any sense of morality across the world.
So, Daniel, Qatar has said that we reserve the right to strike back, all right? And that's fine. However, they have always been, they've literally been harboring the enemies of Israel. They've been harboring the leadership of effectively of the country which committed the atrocity of October the 7th. So, do you really think they have the ability, or even should they strike back to Israel? Because in my mind, this is not an attack on Qatar as such. It's literally a very surgical, precise strike in order to get rid of the enemies. So if you harbor, Nazis during the Second World War, would you complain if the Allies bomb you? I mean, what do you think?
Well, if we go to sort of last few decades and the way this was sort of enforced, well, first you of course have to go to the UN to see how those things are supposed to be dealt with. Now, my understanding is unless there is a group in your borders that is actively or is just planning attack or is actively attacking another nation, that nation has a right to sort of strike that group. Of course, if not, so this example would be not, since I'm not sure if Hamas did have any sort of like military things in Qatar. Most likely not. It's just the chief negotiating team, as they were rebranded as. So since it's only then, of course, Israel should take it to the UN Security Council, which of course is stupid. When it comes to sort of what was more of a accepted, I think the way US has at least acted in the Middle East is this policy of I think it's like unwilling or unable, meaning if a nation is unwilling or unable to do anything about the terrorists inside its border, Israel or America will basically strike it. I think was it? I'm trying to remember who was the terrorist in Pakistan that America
No,
decided to take.
Bin Laden, yeah, that was
Oh,
it.
that was Bin Laden. Okay, so I think there was the idea there that basically Pakistan refused to or didn't. I'm not sure what exactly it was, but didn't want to sort of work fully on getting rid of him or trying to capture him or do something about him. So America did it sort of like unilaterally. When it comes to Qatar, I mean, as you said, there is this weird policy of separating Hamas political wing from its military wing. I think even in the UK, until a few years ago, it was only the Al-Qassam brigades, the military wing of Hamas, that were a designated terrorist organization. Hamas itself wasn't a terrorist organization. So that seems to be what a lot of nations are taking, right? Like that rebranding, like it's a chief negotiating team. These guys were negotiating a peace in Gaza, and they were taken out by these demonic Jews. No, absolutely not. This is a terrorist organization. These are people who have played a role, different kind of role in basically trying to kill Jewish people, even if you are simply raising money for Hamas or, I mean, doing anything. Again, it's a terrorist organization. If, for example, you were, uh, I mean, we've just seen it recently in the UK with the designating or proscribing as terrorist groups, some of the local UK groups, right? Giving money to that organization, being part of that organization, any of that is enough to label you as a terrorist, and and that basically, has a certain I don't know what to call it, but you will get in trouble for that. When it comes to when it comes to the way Israel deals with it, should be absolutely assassinations and taken out. I wish Israel was more stronger also on Gaza itself and not just on foreign leaders, because it's the Palestinians themselves who want to continue this fighting against Israel. Um, what
Yeah.
was your original question?
Uh,
What's your question?
Can't remember, sorry. But I wanted to move on about you mentioned the negotiation team, and looks like after this particular event, people are talking about, oh well, the negotiation for the hostages are over, and not only that, but also the Abraham Accord and the normalization of ties with Arab nations for Israel might be put into jeopardy. I mean, again, Daniel, do we have to worry about this kind of stuff? Should Israel be concerned about the fact that perhaps Qatar will not provide a mechanism for Israel to deal with the terrorists? Should Israel be worried about perhaps normalization ties with the rest of the Middle East might be stalled? I mean, it doesn't mean it's going to happen. It's just people are speculating about the outcomes. And what certainly looks, unfortunately, possible is that Israel will never try and hit them again in Qatar. Looks more and more unlikely that they will take such a action again. But does it matter that the leaders have not been removed? I mean, what's the next steps? What does this strike mean in terms of, for example, the negotiation with Hamas?
Well, first of all, when it comes to the Abraham Accords, I mean, Netanyahu clearly is somebody who wants normalization with the Arab states. He talked openly about specifically Saudi Arabia, that he wants normalization there. Should Israel want it? I mean, most likely not. Again, I cannot see the benefit of Israel from normalizing relations with these nations. Again, normalization is something that simply happens if you are a civilized nation. It's not something you have to go out of your way. When it comes to the countries in Abraham Accords, which I'm just going to try and remember. I think it's like Sudan, United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Oman, maybe even Morocco. I'm not sure. So it's like, are really these countries that are this sort of like, this has to happen? And then when you go to countries that already have normalized relations, Jordan, Egypt, I'm not sure if Lebanon is fully normalized. But again, those are countries that want the destruction of Israel. So I don't really see, from Egypt specifically, Hamas has been getting armed through tunnels going under the Egyptian Gazan border. So, like, what is the benefit of this normalization if when it comes to Qatar, right? Hamas has been getting financed by Qatar. So, like, yeah, we can talk about normalization, but what does it really mean if those nations continue to help and, yeah, help fund a terrorist organization that is sort of like your biggest thorn in your foot right now? If if the negotiation will still happen, I mean, probably. I mean, Israel has done already a lot that technically could have shut down the negotiation, but Hamas has no reason to really ever stop negotiating. They will always benefit from negotiating, and Israel, I don't think, is willing enough to completely abandon negotiations, to a large extent because of its population, right? The Israeli people, or some Israeli people, do want these negotiations to happen. Some people on the political scene do want a straight up ceasefire. So
Do you think, I mean, again, here we are totally in the realm of speculation, but do you think that this kind of strike um, might have had as a secondary purpose, perhaps, to derail negotiation altogether, to relieve some internal pressure, political pressure in Israel, by saying, oh, well, we cannot follow that kind of line because they finally realized that, as you mentioned, dealing with terrorists is not really conducive to a good, happy future for Israel. In fact, if you keep dealing with terrorists, there's not going to be an Israel very soon.
Uh, I mean, again, that assumes some kind of like after October 7th, and there was a little bit of a sort of unity in the Israeli population, but that only happened until like October 10th, and then you had sort of like calls for negotiations, for a ceasefire. So I don't think there is anything Israel or Netanyahu can do that would, or even Hamas can do for that matter, that would, or Iran, that would tell the Israeli population, no, we have to refuse all negotiations. Once there is a wrong philosophy on the ground, uh, they will always want it. I mean, I've seen some of the reports on the from the Israeli news, and a lot of it is that this was a bad action by Israel, and that negotiation should happen. When it comes to the international community, pretty much every world leader. I haven't read every single one, but most of them has said, "Oh, this is a bad thing. Israel should negotiate. We should have a ceasefire. We should have peace. More aid should go in." This is more of what you see.
Yeah. I think one of the things Qatar has said is it reserves the right to, respond, but that doesn't mean necessarily militarily, and is most likely to be diplomatically, isn't it? And given there's a UN Security Council meeting today, it may even be taking place whilst we're doing the show. They may well respond via that. They may well issue statements via that, but in all likelihood, their whole MO has always been to negotiate regardless of what goes on, and to change that will be their own departure from a long term strategy, which they've used so far. And I mean, all of the accusations thrown at Israel in the course of this, that this will spread the war to a wider region, for example, which is just an escalation, rebadged comment, which is essentially harboring Hamas leadership in a wider region, will spread that war to a wider region because you're going to take them out wherever they are, and that is what Israel has declared it will do and has tried to act upon. So I think that one is moot to say the least. But when you're also looking at what's taking place in the West at the same time and their interaction with this, we've had Ursula von der Leyen giving her State of the Union address in the EU, and she's been doing little more than quoting Hamas propaganda in many ways in describing images from Gaza, which is basically the picture style diplomacy, picture style propaganda of that Hamas use when she's been talking about people killed while begging for food, or mothers and lifeless babies and all that kind of thing, and also talking about how Israel is guilty of the financial suffocation of the Palestinian Authority. And not least while they want to set up their own donor fund for supporting the Palestine's reconstruction in the future. Now, that is standard EU talk for whatever area of the world has got in, whatever state it's got in. We want some of the action when it comes to rebuilding it. We don't care how it got there, even if we were involved in some level in supporting those that perpetrated it, or encouraging them, or not acting to dissuade them sufficiently. All of that is the bigger picture of what's going on at the moment. And like I said earlier on in the introduction, it certainly seems that this whole MO that the Qataris have used has infiltrated the whole world. I'm not saying it originated from them. This realpolitik has been a long-standing thing, but the similarities between how Qatar has dealt with conflicting sides and unable to choose between good and evil, so has the West. And these are just further examples of that, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to the European Union, as you said, they will sort of continue funding more of Palestinian Authority because, Palestinian Authority abolished Martyrs Fund, which of course they didn't. Well, they did officially abolish it earlier this year in February, but it looks like families of terrorists have been still receiving the stipend, have still been receiving the money. So this hasn't stopped. The West has this problem of, continuously wanting to fund these third world countries, no matter how evil they are, no matter how bad of a government or how bad of a policy those countries are engaging it. Instead of focusing on itself, again, almost every single European country has big problems. France has huge financial problems. Most of the EU countries do, yet none of them refuse to actually do something about it and instead continue living in delusion and continue sort of like focusing. I mean, again, even the fact that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict seemingly is the sort of number one thing going on in the EU, despite the fact that Ukraine should be the number one topic, even if we go sort of outside of borders of EU, and the fact the Russian drones have invaded again Polish airspace. Instead of focusing on that, which is a proper thing, they continuously focus on Israel and on putting sanctions possible on Israel and kicking out Israel, one of the greatest countries when it comes to innovation, and kicking them out of partnerships with the EU.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is the EU that they got themselves into bed with so many dictators, starting with China and Putin, and they were depending 100% on their gas import from Russia. Then when Putin invaded Ukraine in 22, what happens? Well, they found themselves they found themselves, we have to get the gas from somebody else. So they went jumped into bed with Qatar, and they got majority of imports now, is official imports from Qatar. So they couldn't possibly come out and condemn Qatar for what they've been doing with Hamas. They couldn't possibly tell Qatar, well, you're not really a bunch of civilized people, so move away. I mean, they got themselves in this situation. It was a choice that the European country did by pursuing the stupid target of net zero. Von der Leyen started her reign as president of the Commission with pushing the Green Deal, which meant let's not depend on fossil fuels anymore, which despite taking more and more amounts from Russia and now Qatar, it was designed to cripple, and it actually has crippled countries in the West. We've seen what happened to Spain only a couple of months ago, when their grid couldn't rely on the supply of electricity from renewable sources, and the whole thing fell apart. Massive blackout. Here in Britain, we're not faring much better. All of the pursuit this socialist utopia of net zero business, which meant that relying on gas imported from our allies like America wasn't even considered until 2000, until the invasion of Ukraine. They didn't even have terminals in the ports to import liquid gas from the United States, for example. Germany has to scramble to put those things on some floating buoys in order to get the pipes far away from enough land for American ships to provide liquefied gas. The whole thing is so ridiculous. This shows what happens when you pursue a policy of appeasement, when you actually choose the short-term fixes with the next door dictator because they're like us, we're not better than them, and also this kind of continuous state of moral equality between cultures. It's like, I'm sorry, you cannot deal with this kind of people, and this is the consequence, isn't it?
Yeah, and if you take the EU, the collective GDP of EU countries is about 20 million. If you include UK, which oftentimes has pretty much similar policy with the EU, or possibly Canada that might join the EU, you get to about 25, 26 trillion. Which is almost rivaling the United States. And you're telling me a country of Qatar of like half a billion, half a trillion, if that, and that is including all of the wealth from Al Thani family, is like doing our policy. I mean, you said about sort of like the invasion of 22 EU countries didn't really know what to do about energy. It's not like Ukraine was invaded in the past that we could have prepared for this thing. So it's a continuous refusal to actually acknowledge what is going on and actually wanting to do something about it. That is, sort of my biggest problem with the EU. The fact that like the even the general idea would be good if they actually like did anything. But maybe that goes back to some extent towards these people. I mean, I brought up the example of France. It's I mean, whenever you try to fix things in France, people go to the streets. So what are you supposed to do at the end of the day?
And of course, as you mentioned before, the main uh, point of von der Leyen's speech, or at least the main issue in Europe at the moment, is how to punish Israel. Particularly, they're talking about the EU association agreement with Israel and whether to restrict or reduce, the efficiency and effectiveness of that by punishing Israel. But for which they need a qualified majority to get through. So that's not guaranteed that that will happen. But of course, the each country is constantly leaning on other countries within the EU in order to make that happen. I think Germany is the crucial one, which the decision that the Germans make on that front will be what is decisive as to whether that happens and that trade deal between the EU and Israel in all but name is threatened or not. But I mean, Israel is a key trading partner with the EU. I think about 30%, isn't it, of Israel's external trade goes with the EU. So a lot of this is important stuff for Israel. And whilst von der Leyen is talking about financially suffocating the Palestinian Authority being a bad thing, they're also trying to financially suffocate Israel wherever they can. And surely that represents the double standard that we're talking about.
And this is exactly the point that every Western country is trying to create a problem with Israel. Is trying to pushing the line. We do not want to trade with Israel because they're committing blah 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 blah. But frankly, if I were Israel, I would start considering stop investing in these kind of countries because they need you more than you need them, frankly. The EU already tried to eject Israel from some research programs. And then they realized, hang on a second, these guys, Israeli, are providing so much resources and so many IP value to us that we can't really do that. So, Israel should fight back a bit and let these people understand that you cannot virtue signal, you cannot go against the only democratic state in the Middle East and then expect the alternative, i.e. the Palestinians, the kind of savagery that they are pushing for, effectively they are protecting medieval savages, are not going to help you because they are hell-bent into destroying civilization and they're quite open about it. Number of times they've been saying that. And second, they haven't got the ability or the willingness to work with you in the first place. So by kicking out Israel, you're not only trying to harm Israel because it's Israel, but you also harm yourself. I mean, Israel is a much better ally than any of the other theocracies and dictatorship together.
Perhaps Israel and the EU will end up having some trade negotiation talks in Doha at some point. Because that's the place you should go for neutrality, it would seem. Daniel, we're coming towards the end of the time here. So what are your final thoughts, and how can we wrap up this whole Qatari status as we know it at this point, based on the information that's currently verifiable to us out here?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned about the double standard about the EU actions towards Israel versus towards Palestinian Authority. But the fact is, it's not a double standard. It's acting positively towards dictatorships and negatively towards free countries. It's not a double standard. Those are different countries, and for some reason, you are acting the opposite way you should be. So again, I EU really needs to fix its moral standard if it wants to continue existing in the future, since especially since most of the EU countries are realizing they cannot always rely on the White House going in the right direction at all times, and they need to figure out their own stuff, but not to oppress their people even more and to screw up things even more. When it comes to Qatar, I hope will never. I hope there won't be any negotiations. I hope Qatar will be viewed for what it is, a dictatorship like any other. Just because the Al Thani family managed to gobble up a bit more money than others doesn't mean it's we should now go after them. Again, if European economies were free, we would have more than enough investment to continue growing. Again, just look when even a single country opens up, the international world floods there as soon as they see. Again, I think the European economies right now are growing by like 1, maybe 2% a year. If it's like 2%, it's like, wow, this country is like booming. When in free countries, the GDP growth is in 5, 6, 7, and even 10% when it manages to really free up. Looking at Argentina, when it freed up some of the capital controls, how much investment flooded in. This is what happens when you have a free country. Everybody wants to have peace of that growing state. So again, the West always acts as if we have no power, as if we cannot put any pressure for anybody because we are the good guys. No, simply free up the economy and you won't have to make deals with the dictatorships to get money. They will want it.
Yes, I mean, freedom and prosperity is not just a correlation, it's causation. So, it's time we realize that the 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 failed ideology, socialism, the ideology never dies. It's failed. Stop trying in different versions. It doesn't work. We've seen it over and over again. But yeah.
And in the case of Argentina, let's hope Malay can hang on long enough to ensure Argentina's continued prosperity and it's not squandered by socialists trying to spend all the achievements that he's made so far. But time will tell again there. Okay, well, thank you, Daniel. Where can people find you? And is there anything else we should flag up to our audience at this point?
Well, you can find me on my channel, Dan to Dan, and of course, people should check out objectivism.co.uk to find out more about the Irreplaceable Spark conference later this year, next month actually, October 25th, 26th in Orange County, California. So tickets are still available. Check out objectivism.co.uk.
Thank you. And don't forget also to check out the Briefly Objective sister channel to this. The link's in the description below. And thank you very much, Daniel, for joining us. And the channel will be back tomorrow with more from the Daily Objective and the reality show. So please join us then. Thanks a lot and goodbye.